You know what's fun? Basketball. Basketball is fun. Isn't it nice when we can laugh and joke and smile and not have to worry about me getting angry and yelling about rotations and poor examples of play? All it takes is Ja Morant triple doubles and Jaren Jackson Jr. dunking on Anthony Davis. Isn't this much more enjoyable when the Memphis Grizzlies win? It was a win they were supposed to get, but it was a win nonetheless, keeping them atop at the number 2 seed in the West. Let's talk about it and more here on Locked On Grizzlies. Lock in with me.
You are Locked On Grizzlies, your daily Memphis Grizzlies podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Dear listener, dear viewer, my dear friend, welcome to another episode of Locked On Grizzlies. I am your host, Joe Mullinax, once again flying solo, but I come bearing good news. It'll be for the final time that I'll be flying solo on our Thursday episode of Locked On Grizzlies. You guys are going to have a chance to hang out with DeMichael Cole once again, which I'm very excited for you guys to have. And then on your Friday episode, you get to start your weekend off the right way with both of us back in the saddle together talking Grizzlies basketball. Does it get much better than that? I think it doesn't, except for our conversation that you and I are going to have on this episode of Locked On Grizzlies about the winning Memphis Grizzlies. Make sure that you are subscribing to Locked On Grizzlies wherever you get your podcasts. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, proud members of the Locked On Podcast Network. You can also check us out over on YouTube. Like, comment, rate, review. Most importantly, subscribe. Continue to make us a part of your Memphis Grizzlies and NBA content experience. Today is an exciting day over at Locked On Grizzlies for your boy, Joe Mullinax. The Memphis Grizzlies won, which we're going to get to here in a moment. But I also want to give a quick shout out to Bluff City Media. It is the very first day, day one of the newest chapter of Grizzly Bear Blues. Now I can say formerly of SB Nation, which is kind of still weird to say, but now proud members of Bluff City Media, and I am returning to GBB as a member of Bluff City Media as a Memphis Grizzlies columnist. So make sure you're checking out Bluff City Media. Make sure you're checking out all the great work. It's not just the Grizzlies that are covered over at Bluff City Media. It's also the Memphis Tigers, 901 FC Soccer, bluffcitymedia.co/join. You can get 10% off right now if you use the promo code Mullinax on an annual subscription. You'll get my great content. I have an article about Steven Adams going up, all sorts of different pieces. There's free material as well for free subscribers, but insider information, which goes along with my feature work, like I was doing over at my Substack, Written in the Dark, that will be under the insider banner over at Bluff City Media. So again, bluffcitymedia.co/join, 10% off right now if you use the promo code Mullinax. Go do it. As you're listening to this episode, you'll get to read me singing the praises of Steven Adams, but at least for one night, the Memphis Grizzlies didn't need him, although it seemed like at times they might. Memphis knocks off the Los Angeles Lakers 121-109. It was touch and go there for a little bit, right? I know I'm not the only one that was nervous watching that first half, especially that second quarter. The Grizzlies get out to a 4-point lead at the end of the first frame. The second quarter does not go the way of the Memphis Grizzlies. They were lethargic on offense, only 20 points scored. The Lakers seemed to be getting the best of the 50-50 balls, seemed to have better effort and energy all around. It looked like it might be a tough night for the Memphis Grizzlies in a game that without LeBron James, without D'Angelo Russell, let's be honest, Memphis needed to win. That was a game the Grizzlies were expected to win with the Lakers down multiple key players. The Grizzlies had to get the job done. Thankfully, the third quarter happened, and the Memphis Grizzlies exploded on the Los Angeles Lakers. I'm talking 47-35 third quarter, almost 50 points scored for the Memphis Grizzlies in that third quarter. And the guy leading the charge was the guy who looked to be struggling, at least for a little while there, even to start the third quarter. I think I tweeted out something about Ja Morant having a tough start to that third frame. He had a turnover. He had a bad attempt on a layup. That was the only shot he missed in the entire quarter, I believe. He scores a team record, a franchise record, 28 points in the third quarter without making a single three-point shot. That's phenomenal. Ja has a 39, 10, and 10 triple-double. He's 9 of 11 from the charity stripe, which is nice to see for Mr. Morant. And despite not making a three, he helps kickstart the Grizzlies and puts them in a position to win this game, doing superstar things the way Memphis needed him to do it. So Ja Morant, in my piece over at Bluff City Media, I talk about how Steven Adams is essentially Ja Morant's best friend. So much of what Ja wants to do in terms of creating space, getting to the basket, Steven Adams helps in so many ways with that. Again, go check out bluffcitymedia.co right now. Become an insider annual subscription with the promo code Mullinax, 10% off. You can check out in the afternoon in particular how all that works with Adams and Ja. But Ja didn't need Steven Adams in this one, at least not in the third quarter and in the second half. Morant with a massive game. Another player, we're talking positives here in this first segment, right? We'll get a little bit more critical in the second quarter. There's always things you can do better. I'm still not going to yell. Don't worry, I'm not mad this time. There's still always room for improvement, constructive criticism. We'll talk about that a little bit later on in the show. But right now, I'm feeling good. I'm jovial. Ja Morant explodes in the third quarter like only Ja Morant can. You know who else had a really strong game? Jaren Jackson Jr. And the numbers don't jump out at you, right? 16 points, 7 rebounds, 4 blocks. Ho-hum. That's about to be expected for Jaren. But what really stands out when it comes to Jaren Jackson Jr. in this game is the highlight plays. In particular, posterizing Anthony Davis off of a John Conchar floater, which never should have happened, and we'll talk more about it later on in the program. But remember, I'm happy. I'm happy. You and I were having a great conversation. We're laughing. We're joyful because Jaren Jackson Jr. was on ESPN, on the NBA main Twitter account. He was all over social media going viral after dunking on the head of Anthony Davis. Now, don't get me wrong. Anthony Davis had an extremely impressive game in his own right, being the best player for the Lakers. In order for the team to have a chance, they needed AD to do that. 28 points, 19 rebounds, those 28 points on 19 field goals. Yeah, he got the job done on his end, at least. The rest of the team, maybe not so much, especially the starters. Woof, rough night. But Davis did what he was supposed to do, except for getting dunked on by Jaren Jackson Jr. And that was an awesome moment. Jaren had multiple plays like that. That's just the one that jumps out in terms of highlight-worthy impressiveness. Jaren was, at times, the most impressive athlete on the court, running up and down the floor on both ends of the floor. Obviously, Ja had a tremendously successful third quarter. But like I mentioned, he struggled at first. So it was Jaren who was putting the ball in the bucket. It was Jaren being that defensive force, keeping the Grizzlies in the hunt and around the mix of things. So kudos to Jaren Jackson Jr., who really made his presence felt in this game. Not a monster game by his standards, a normal game, which is cool to say about a guy that had 4 blocks, right? A normal performance. But he still could be better. He gets extra points in this game because he dunked on AD the way he did. If you didn't see it, you need to go make sure you're checking it out over on Twitter, social media, YouTube. It's going to be all over the place if you've missed it. Or if you're old school like me, maybe just turn on ESPN and try to catch a SportsCenter highlight. One last quick shout out. Really continued impressive play by Xavier Tillman. And I just talked about how Anthony Davis went off in this game, right? 28 points, 19 rebounds. X drew that assignment a majority of the night, and Anthony Davis, unsurprisingly, took advantage of it because he's just physically more gifted than Xavier Tillman. I don't think X would have issue with me saying that. It's just the truth. Anthony Davis is much more talented. But Tillman was able to take it to AD and whoever else was trying to defend him. A double-double in his own right. 18 points, 11 rebounds. X took 17 shots, which probably should never happen again. Xavier Tillman took more shot attempts than Desmond Bane. He took more than Dillon Brooks too, which maybe was a good thing. We'll talk more about that here momentarily. But Xavier Tillman having 17 shots, Desmond Bane having 13, not ideal. And again, Jaren Jackson Jr. had 14. So X took the second most shots on the Memphis Grizzlies against the Lakers. Not necessarily what you want to see, but he was able to hold his own. He cleaned the glass. He did strong hustle things. He was in a position to where he helped the team find a way to win and kept it close in that first half, helped extend the lead in the second half. He was a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful presence, a plus 10 in the game. That matters a lot, and he helps the team extend those leads. So Xavier Tillman, Ja Morant, Jaren Jackson Jr., you get the Mullinax thumbs up of the game. When we come back here on Locked On Grizzlies, we're going to be a little bit more critical. There are some guys that even with as good as things went, or as well as things went against the Lakers on Tuesday night, there were still some guys that could perhaps give a little bit more. We'll talk about that next here on Locked On Grizzlies. But first, this episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by FanDuel. We are past the midway point of the NBA season, and now is the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. New customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet does not win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It is safe, secure, and super easy to use. Then you can bet on everything, from the money line to point scores, three-pointers drained, and you can get as specific as you want. You could take a look at players' total points, how many rebounds they're going to grab. You can go exclusive, like the 2x3, two three-pointers, scored in the first 3 minutes, as broad or as specific as you'd like. Plus, FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with a same-game parlay. So don't miss the chance to get your no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. We're going to look at ways that the Grizzlies can continue to improve heading into a pretty significant, pretty important 4-game road trip next year on Locked On Grizzlies. Don't go anywhere. Stay with me. Welcome back to Locked On Grizzlies. I am your host, Joe Mullinax. If I am in a happier mood than normal, and I like to think I'm a happy guy, but if I'm joyous, if I'm exuberant, it's because the Grizzlies won a big game against the Lakers on Tuesday, a game they were supposed to win. But hey, you got to get those. You got to put them in your pocket, so to speak, when those opportunities arise, especially with a team like the Sacramento Kings still breathing down the necks of the Memphis Grizzlies trying to get to that 2 seed. I'm also excited because of Bluff City Media. It's the first day of GBB, for my former blog, Grizzly Bear Blues, being part of the Bluff City Media family. I am joining Bluff City Media as a Grizzlies columnist. Hopefully you're going to go and subscribe. 10% off right now when you use the promo code Mullinax. Go to bluffcitymedia.co and join today. Again, promo code Mullinax, Mullinax, 10% off an annual subscription. You've got my content, all the great content that GBB provides, plus Memphis Tigers, plus Memphis Soccer, really changing the game in Memphis with Bluff City Media. So I'm excited to be part of it. Hopefully you'll join us over at bluffcitymedia.co. In the first segment, it was easy to be excited, right? You got Ja Morant dunking on people, scoring 28 points in a quarter. You've got Jaren Jackson Jr. dunking on people, blocking shots. You got Xavier Tillman continuing to his hot streak of strong play. Anthony Davis had his success, but Tillman still was able to make Davis work, and it wasn't able to be a full-blown dominant fest all the time for AD. So those 3 guys really played well. There are some other guys who could have done better, and we're going to start with Dillon Brooks. And Dillon Brooks defensively, I think, deserves a lot of credit for what the backcourt of the Lakers did. Dennis Schroeder was 4 for 11. Dillon was on him at times. Troy Brown Jr. was 1 for 8, just an abysmal game. He really struggled offensively. Malik Beasley's the only guy who had an efficient offensive outing. 12 points on 8 shots, made a couple of threes. But again, that's only 12 points. That's not something that is going to dominate the Grizzlies in any way, shape, or form. 2 reserves, Austin Reeves and Lonnie Walker, actually combined for 38 points. They did better than the starting guards did for the Los Angeles Lakers. So it wasn't Dillon's fault defensively that he had a rough night. It was another game where his shot failed him. 2 for 11 from the field, But the darndest thing is that he was 2 for 6 from 3, which in terms of being a 33% three-point shooter, you'll take that from Dillon Brooks. What that means is he was 0 for 5 from 2. That's concerning because he has to be able to hit those pull-up jumpers that he likes to do in the mid-range, fades away a little bit. I've talked about before how I'd like to see him use that frame, be aggressive again, try to get to the basket. He only had 2 free throw attempts. He just didn't prioritize using his body the same way that he does defensively. And I want to see him refocus on that. He only played 27 minutes, so he should be good to go for tonight's game against the Rockets, and we'll talk more about Grizzlies Houston coming up later in the show, but not a good offensive showing for Dillon. That slump in terms of his offensive production continues. Another poor performance goes to John Konchar. And I mentioned earlier in the show the dunk that you need to go see if you haven't done so already, the putback jam over top of Anthony Davis. It comes on the back of a John Konchar ill-equipped floater attempt. Now, if you watch the highlight, you got to watch the whole thing because you're going to see John Konchar take this shot, and it's never going to go in. Like, there was never an opportunity where this Konchar floater was going to find the bottom of the net. It just was not in the cards for anybody, much less John Konchar, in that particular moment. So thank goodness Jaren Jackson Jr. was there. It's almost like if you watch the play, he saw it coming. He knew that this was going to miss, and he wanted to make sure he was in a position to get that rebound and stuff at home. Not the best opportunity for the Conch. What does he provide? What does he provide? In 14 minutes, he grabbed one rebound. You talk about his elite rebounding, how he helps in that department. He got one board in 14 minutes. John Konchar, that doesn't mean I regret the extension. People like to make fun of the extension. I've seen that on Twitter. I've seen that elsewhere, heard that elsewhere. Why do you extend this guy? I perfectly understand why you extend the guy. He understands the scheme, knows where he fits in a pinch, break in case of emergency. That guy makes a lot of sense in terms of playing the game. And he also probably played a little bit more in this game because of the fact that Dillon Brooks had some foul trouble. Dillon had 5 fouls in his 27 minutes of play. So a little bit of that aggression and that tenacity defensively that we talked about a moment ago leads to foul trouble. That's probably part of the reason why Konchar played the minutes he did. But again, one rebound. Aside from that one rebound, Konchar was essentially getting cardio out there. And because of the Russell and James injuries, it's not like Konchar was going against the very best that the Lakers had to offer, right? I mean, Austin Reeves is a decent basketball player, but if Austin Reeves is putting up 17 on you, Lonnie Walker is a decent basketball player, but 21 from Lonnie Walker, 5 made threes. A lot of those minutes coincided with John Konchar. Konchar was a +3 on the night, but he doesn't make a shot, doesn't make a three, only grabs one board. Why is John Konchar on the floor? Take those 14 minutes and split them across Luke Kennard. Luke Kennard was 2 for 6 from 3, +9 on the night. Again, one rebound, but at least he grabbed one assist. That guy is there to shoot threes. Let him get more run. Luke Kennard is going to help you in the playoffs. Luke Kennard is going to be the guy that is going to help you create the space that you need for Ja Morant in a tight, contested playoff series. It's going to be Kennard, not John Konchar. It's going to be Tyus Jones, who has reinvigorated himself. Again, 3 for 6, 1 for 3 from 3. A strong showing, 7 points, 4 assists, no turnovers. That's more what we need from Tyus Jones, the reserve, right? Tyus Jones, the reserve, only playing 14 or 16 minutes. They need that guy to still be productive in those jawless minutes that the Grizzlies are going to have. Spread them back to Dillon when he's not in foul trouble. Desmond Bane only played 30 minutes. There's another 4 minutes that Bane should have gotten. I'm good with John Konchar being the end of the rotation guy. I'm good with him being on the end of the bench. Again, guys are in foul trouble, injuries. Obviously, that's understandable. But the days of John Konchar getting 14 to 16 minutes consistently, they should be done. Go to a 9-man rotation. Go Clark, Aldama, Jones, and Kennard. You don't need that 10th guy. You don't need it. You have the Sacramento Kings hot on your heels. They are a basketball team that is in the mix to try to take you out of the 2 seed. And if there's a team that should be interested in the 2 seed, it's the Memphis Grizzlies because they're not very good on the road. We're going to talk more about that here in a moment on Locked On Grizzlies. They don't have a good road record. So with that in mind, you want to maintain that 2 seed positioning. It's time to shorten the rotation. It's time to shorten it. If Zaire Williams isn't ready, that's fine. Clark, Aldama, Tyus Jones, Kennard. Those should be your 4. You can talk about Xavier Tillman being in that mix when Steven Adams returns, because obviously Steven Adams will be in that mix. But John Konchar, I'm good. I don't need to see any more of that. So Dillon Brooks, John Konchar, those are the 2 guys. See, I'm doing great here. I'm thrilled. I'm happy. I thought there was going to be 3 guys that we needed to critique. There's only 2. There's only two guys that I need a little bit more from, even Brandon Clark, who you say, oh, well, Xavier Tillman's out playing Brandon Clark. In 15 minutes, Clark had 6 points, 5 rebounds, 2 assists. Not bad. So even in those situations, Memphis is having some success. I think it's time to tighten it up in the rotation, get it down to 9. Goodbye, John Conchar. We hardly knew ye. Hang out on the bench, be there if necessary. But Memphis needs some wins. They need to start racking up some victories. And that process continues tonight. That's the crazy thing about the NBA. Back-to-backs. Memphis wins a game against the Lakers. Now they are on the road taking on the Houston Rockets. The Houston Rockets had a tough night themselves on Tuesday night, losing by double digits to the Denver Nuggets, who the Grizzlies just blew out at home. How can Memphis keep the good vibes rolling and start a pretty important road trip with a victory? We're going to talk about that next here on Locked On Grizzlies. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to Locked On Grizzlies. I am your host, Joe Mullinax. Still happy, still feeling it. I'm happy because DeMichael Cole on our next episode of Locked On Grizzlies, the Thursday show, he's going to be flying solo for the first time in a while. He's going to take you on a Memphis Grizzlies journey, talking about Grizzlies, Rockets, and other NBA topics. And then the two of us will be back together for Friday's show to close out the week. That's a reason to be excited. Another reason to be excited, Bluff City Media. The first day of Grizzly Bear Blues being part of Bluff City Media, no longer part of SB Nation. Go to bluffcitymedia.co. Sign up, join. Annual subscription, 10% off using the promo code Mullinax. I've got a feature going up there today about Steven Adams and his importance to the team. I'm going to be on Twitter tonight covering the game for Bluff City Media and Grizzly Bear Blues. I'm going to be doing the quick recap. It's going to be like old times over there. I'm ecstatic. I'm excited. All good things. And I'm also excited because Memphis is starting a pretty important road trip. Because as good as the Grizzlies have played against the Lakers, as nice as it is to be able to say that Memphis is 5-2 in their last 7 games, seems like they've woken up a little bit. One of those losses was the tough one in Philly where they collapsed. You could easily argue that Memphis could have won that game against the 76ers. A major 4-game road trip for a team that is not particularly strong on the road. That's been talked about here, there, and everywhere. The Memphis Grizzlies have one of the worst road records of all the teams currently in the top seeded range. Again, the Suns, the Mavericks, similar in terms of being bad in terms of away records. But if you want to truly consider yourself an NBA championship contending team, you have to be good on the road. The Bucks are good on the road. The Boston Celtics are good on the road. Teams like the Denver Nuggets, 1 game up on the road, 16-15. But teams like the Sacramento Kings, even though their schedule is tough to close out the season, they're good road teams. And the Kings continue to rack up wins. Sacramento's only a game or so behind the Memphis Grizzlies for the 2 seed. So Memphis needs to find ways to pick up wins in places like Houston. And it's a big one because after the Houston game comes Denver on a Friday night. And then after that comes the Clippers on a Sunday and then the Lakers on a Tuesday. So the next 3 games coming up after Houston are considerably more challenging than the Houston Rockets. And after a game like the Lakers, where Ja has the types of plays that he did in a triple-double, almost scoring 40 points, Jaren Jackson Jr.'s massive dunk and blocks and all the fun that seemed to be had, the high of that energy can come crashing down if they lose a game in Houston that they're not supposed to lose. Now, you're probably listening to this and thinking to yourself, come on, Joe, are they really going to lose to the Rockets? The Houston Rockets, the team that lost by 20-some points to the Denver Nuggets on Tuesday night, the team that has openly been criticized for not really trying to get better, the team that has lost 10 games in a row? Are you really that concerned about the Houston Rockets? And not only have they lost those 10 games in a row, the last 5 games in a row that they've lost have been by double digits. The closest game was a 15-point loss to the Golden State Warriors. Are you really that concerned, Joe? The answer is no, I'm not really that concerned. But I've seen the Grizzlies play with their food. I've seen them be in a position where they don't take an opponent seriously. And because of that, a team hangs around longer than they're supposed to. And because of that, they think that they can hang. They have hope. And hope is a dangerous, fleeting thing. If Memphis can go in and put their foot on the throat of the Houston Rockets and make them feel like they're falling down a pit of despair, well, then the game will be over quickly and Memphis can get some reserve guys, some reps, and they can look ahead to the more difficult portion of the road trip, starting with Denver on Friday night. Big 1-versus-2 matchup. But you can't sleep on the Rockets. Alperen Sengun is having a wonderful season. He's not very good defensively, and he struggled with Jokic last night. Apparently everybody but Xavier Tillman struggles with Jokic. But it's a defensive team that's abysmal. The Rockets just aren't good on that end of the floor. Offensively, they have guys that can score the basketball. Jalen Green can go off at any point. Jabari Smith Jr. can go off at any point. Kenyon Martin Jr. He scored 15 points on 13 shots against the Nuggets. Josh Christopher, good friends with Ja Morant. He can score. Ty Washington. Tari Eason. That's a guy who defensively and in terms of rebounding, off the bench, he had 12 rebounds and 17 points. He posted a double-double against the Nuggets. The thing that you have to respect about Denver is they went into Houston and they ended it early. They made it very clear that this was not a game that Houston deserved to be in with the Denver Nuggets, the number 1 seed in the Western Conference. It was 41-30 at the end of the first quarter, and it was 74-54 at the end of the first half. 74-54. The Denver Nuggets were up by 20. That game was essentially already in the bag. It was out of reach. The Rockets were not going to make that ground up. So while this is one of the most difficult back-to-backs, even though it's a home and home for the Rockets, they lost to Denver at home, and the Grizzlies are going to be in Houston taking on the Rockets. They're playing the number 1 and the number 2 seeds in the Western Conference back-to-back. What is Houston going to be able to do against the Grizzlies if Memphis is coming in healthy and sound of mind and focused? Nothing. Nothing is the answer. The Rockets are not going to be able to score on Jaren Jackson Jr. The Rockets are not going to be able to stay in front of Ja Morant. The Rockets have been a get-right of sorts for guys that are struggling. Jamal Murray of the Denver Nuggets is a great example of that. Jamal Murray had been quiet on the scoring front as a perimeter player. He didn't dominate the Grizzlies. He was not particularly strong in that recent contest against Memphis. That's important because as Jamal Murray goes into this game, and he went into it pretty focused, he had a chance to right that wrong. Again, Jamal Murray only had 8 points against the Grizzlies on 13 shot attempts. Against the Houston Rockets, 12 of 18, 5 for 10 from 3, 32 points, 6 assists, and 32 minutes played. Ja got right in the third quarter against the Los Angeles Lakers, so maybe he doesn't need a get-right game anymore. But if there's ever a game for Ja to get a 50-burger, to try to do his best Damian Lillard impression, and again, Lillard is so amazing from 3, they would do it in different ways. But if there was a game for Ja to try to show his scoring chops, it would be this one against the Houston Rockets. If there was a game for Desmond Bane or Luke Kennard to get hot from 3 and put 5 or 6 threes in the bucket, the 3-point defense of the Rockets is just so atrocious in terms of understanding rotations, young players, putting forth the effort to get to those rotations. All of that is a major problem for Houston. You don't lose 5 games in a row by double digits. You don't lose 10 in a row overall without having some problems defensively, and that's exactly where Houston's at. So the Grizzlies, against a better team than Houston, the Los Angeles Lakers, were able to hang 47 on their heads. Again, no LeBron James, no D'Angelo Russell. All those things matter. Of course, context is important. But the Houston Rockets are not as good as the team that Memphis beat on Tuesday night. The Houston Rockets don't have the motivation. They're looking to the end of the season, which is about 6 weeks away for them. And there's not really a ton of signs of development, even though there's a lot of young talent on that Houston team that you should, in theory, be excited about if you're a Rockets fan. Whether it's coaching, the grind of the season, the lack of veteran leadership and presence, whatever the case might be, Eric Gordon's gone. Thank goodness for him. hanging out with the Clippers now, getting ready for a playoff push, whereas the Rockets are waiting to go fishing. The Memphis Grizzlies need to go in and do exactly what their one-seeded friends above them in the Western Conference standings did. They have to handle their business. It needs to be a 20-point or so lead at the end of the first half. So if Desmond Bane, Ja Morant, and the like need a little bit of a blow, a little bit of a breather, they can get it going into Denver on Friday night. Because the Denver Nuggets do not play again until they see the Grizzlies at home on Friday. You better believe they're going to want some revenge for what Memphis did to them this past weekend. The Grizzlies could benefit from a little bit of a breather going into that environment on Friday night, and it early against the Houston Rockets. That should be the goal of the Grizzlies. Start fast, finish strong, make it over by halftime. They have the ability physically to do it, but will they be able to maintain the energy and the focus that'll be required to do it? The funny thing about the Houston Rockets is all those guys are professionals. They're all NBA players. And if you let them hang around, you give them that hope. And that hope can be a very scary thing for a team that's expected to go in and dominate. So hopefully the Grizzlies do just that. I think they will. Thank you so much for making Locked On Grizzlies your first listen today. Now make your second listen Game to Game NBA. Every moment, every top performance, every result. Locked On Game to Game covers every game from across the NBA with local analysis that only Locked On can deliver. Follow Game to Game on Locked On NBA, available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. On the next episode of Locked On Grizzlies, DeMichael Cole will be back. He makes his triumphant return, and he's going to fly solo with you on the Thursday show, talking about Grizzlies Rockets, looking at the roster and things that have happened in his absence. So excited to have DeMichael back. And as I mentioned, on Friday's show, the two of us, the dynamic duo, back at it to preview Grizzlies Nuggets, and an important weekend for Memphis. Again, because it's not just that Nuggets game. They also have the Clippers on Sunday. Major run of games coming up for the Grizzlies after the Houston game. They can't overlook Houston, but once they get past that one assumed win, they are looking at 3 tough games on the road. I'm sure DeMichael and I will talk about that when we're together on Friday. But first, on Thursday, you've got DeMichael Cole back in the saddle. Excited to watch and listen to his solo show on Thursday. Until then, though, make sure you're continuing to subscribe, rate, review, like, comment, wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube. Thank you so much for making us here at Locked On Grizzlies proud parts of the Locked On Podcast Network, members of your NBA and Memphis Grizzlies content consumption. Make sure you're checking out bluffcitymedia.co. Join over there. 10% off your annual subscription with the promo code Mullinax. Check out my insider content as well as Parker Fleming's. All the great work in terms of the Memphis Tigers, 901 FC Soccer. Nobody's going to be covering all of Memphis sports like Bluff City Media. I'm excited to be part of it as their Grizzlies columnist. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'll be on Twitter on Wednesday night. Interact with me there. Over on the Grizzly Bear Blues account, be doing the quick recap, just like old times. It's going to be a great time. And it's an exciting time to be a fan of the Memphis Grizzlies as Bluff City Media expands. Another great option for consumption of content when it comes to Memphis sports. Until next time, until Friday, that's when you'll see me next, but you've got DeMichael Cole. How lucky are you? You've got DeMichael Cole with you for Thursday's show. Thank you so much for being with me. Enjoy the game on Wednesday night. Continue to stay locked in. I'm Joe Mullinax, and this is Locked On Grizzlies.